What's up, guys? Lvladen here, and today I'm coming at you with an exciting video. Exciting topic, rather. Red Paladins are finally, like, I can't believe it, we're getting reworked. Now, this is something that Blizzard they don't do. They just don't do. The Blizzard of the past doesn't do this. We've had insanely consistent, frequent balancing changes since the beginning of the expansion in PvP. We've had meta shifts almost every week, and now they're actually reworking the bad spec that is Retribution Paladin from the ground up. Like, I can't believe it. Kudos to Blizzard. Kudos to Dragonflight. This is definitely one of my favorite expansions so far between Solo Shuffle and the frequent balancing changes. Like, I can't believe it. So, I want to get into the topic of the rework real quick. Now, before we go any further, I don't think anyone should be saying stuff like, you know, why didn't this happen sooner, XYZ. They kind of foreshadowed or said behind the scenes that, you know, this expansion was rushed. Things that they wanted to do had to get rushed for the development. And I'm just so thankful that they're actually taking the time before 10.1 to rework RET completely. Let's get into the blue post, and then I'll go over my thoughts on what some of the changes should be in the future. So, right here, well met. We're doing a substantial rework to the Retribution talent tree in patch 10.0.7. Substantial. That is amazing to hear. Some of the issues that they're going to talk about here are button bloat, stacking modifiers, survivability, maneuverability, and utility. Basically hitting on every single point that we have complained about for probably the past 3 expansions. Now, I'm going to start off, I'll go in order that they talk about. So, starting here, button bloat. Retributions currently have a fairly large number of abilities, and some of these feel unnecessary and inefficient. We're working to tone down and have a more focused set of abilities and cooldowns. Now, this is the only thing I'm a little conflicted on. Now, for me personally, the button bloat has felt very fun. For the first time in what I can remember, I enjoy the Retribution rotation because we have so many buttons. Now, where the breaking point is for me, though, is the buttons don't necessarily flow all the time. Like, quite frequently, we'll overcap and Crusader Strike, but that goes into maneuverability because we're getting kited. Exorcism is strong in PvP right now, but it doesn't have a place in the rotation or a purpose outside of push this button on cooldown. It doesn't even generate a holy power. Like, straight up, just rework the rotation if you want. Feel free to do it. I don't care. I don't care. I'm just so happy. The one rotational ability I would like to see remain is Final Verdict. I think going forward, if they got rid of everything from the Retribution tree right here and kept Final Verdict, that would be perfect for me. Everything else, scrap it. Redo it. I don't care. Change some of the functions of the abilities. I don't know. Make Exorcism cause Empyrean Legacy. That would be a good start for me. Make Exorcism just a pure dot. Give us a maintenance dot. That would be cool. But stuff like Exorcism has no point in the rotation outside of doing damage. And having Empyrean Legacy attached to a Judgment ability that just kind of passively goes off whenever, it's kind of like, technically you can control it, but you're going to have to hold your Judgment. That doesn't feel good. And that's something I frequently complained about in the beta, and hopefully they do address this if they do intend to keep Exorcism or Empyrean Legacy around. Stuff like Radiant Decree was cool, honestly. Like, having an AoE slapper spender like that was interesting. It was fun in the rotation, and guess what? It didn't work out because of stacking modifiers, which is the next point that they go over right here. So, stacking modifiers. There are currently several talents and abilities providing stacking bonuses, which can make for a confusing and messy playstyle that deals extreme burst damage, but in return, leaves your core abilities feeling unsatisfying and undertuned. This is all true. This is just simply, it's all true. If we go in game here and we look at some of the stacking modifiers, like, I don't even know where to begin. Just these 3 talents right here, Aspirations of Divinity, of Dusk and Dawn, Seal of Order, these are all stacking modifiers. Seal of Might, Wings, stacking modifier. Seraphim, stacking modifier. Seal of the Crusader, stacking modifier. Final Reckoning, active and passive, stacking modifier. Seraphim, or Ashes to Ashes version of Seraphim, stacking modifier. What else do we have here that is a stacking modifier? I know there's more. Divine Purpose, a stacking modifier. Now, I don't know if I would like actually consider Divine Purpose core mechanic to be a stacking modifier, because originally back in the day, I believe it was just a free instant proc without the 15% increased damage or healing. But technically, that that counts. That is a stacking modifier. What else do we have here that is a stacking modifier? I'm probably missing some stuff. I guess Sealed Verdict, stacking modifier. There's so many little buttons that talents that increase our damage to the point where like a regular look at this. The tooltip on Final Verdict right now, and this is obviously not in PvP combat, is about 2,500 damage. But in PvP, during my burst, when I hit people with Final Verdict, it's hitting for 140k. That's crazy. Like, there's so many stacking modifiers in the game that, yes, that is something that should get tuned down, should get changed, and, maybe our basic rotation can actually do some damage. And to be fair, right now it kind of is, like Crusader Strike, Blade of Justice, they are up there, Exorcism, but it just doesn't feel so great because, come on. Okay, moving on from stacking modifiers. We all know that RET does a lot of burst, or did a lot of burst last patch before the hotfix nerfs. Survivability right here. Retribution currently has one of the highest death rates across all forms of content. All forms. So raiding, PvE, world content, PvP. We just we take the D. We take the damn. It's so hard for Retribution to survive in the current meta. Stuff like Blessing of Protection is purgeable. Divine Shield. There's so many classes. Well, I guess there's just Priest and Warrior, but there's so many Priests right now that Divine Shield doesn't even feel like a cooldown. It's just gone instantly all the time. And outside of that, we don't really have the percentage damage reductions that other classes do. So in open world content, if we took Divine Protection, it's only 20% for 8 seconds. In PvP, it's 30%, which is cool. But then the cooldown without Unbreakable Spirit is 2 minutes. That's crazy. Shield of Vengeance is affected by dampening. And it has no percent damage reduction on it. So a lot of the times when you push this ability in PvP, even with an emblem to increase its absorb, it's gone before the global cooldown ends. Like, it actually is. If you've played Retribution in the current solo shuffle 3v3 meta, you know that this is not really a defensive cooldown. Now, I do want to talk about defensives, or more about Shield of Vengeance, because I think this is a spell that needs to go. A lot of the times, people used to complain about Shield of Vengeance doing damage. Get rid of that. Bring back Sacred Shield. Bring back Cataclysm Sacred Shield in Warlords of Draenor Sacred Shield. I believe we had it in WoD. Maybe it was just Cata. But when RET was reduced to 30% HP back in the day, our Sacred Shield would put a massive absorb on us, and during that absorb, our healing taken was increased. So that could kind of go along with Healing Hands. If Healing Hands was kept around and we like procced our 30% absorb from Sacred Shield, we could actually kind of heal ourselves back up, which would be really cool. And something that I do think they got to be careful about is massively increasing off healing for hybrids, because a lot of players don't really like metas where hybrids are doing a ton of healing. Personally, I do, because I love playing double DPS 2s. It's one of the most fun times I've ever had in WoW Arena. So it would be cool if RET, in particular, did a lot of off-healing, because we sacrifice our damage for off-healing. But right now, if we sacrifice our damage for off-healing, we just don't have the off-healing. But back to Shield of Vengeance, scrap this spell entirely, please. Because people complain about it when they solo break it on themselves, even though they shouldn't. You can just split it between 2 people, and that does like almost no damage. But also at the same time, it's not really a real defensive for RET Paladin. Even on a minute cooldown in PvP, it's just not that good. Now, they do talk about, in the blue post, we're looking at improvements to active abilities and cooldowns, but also passive bonuses. This is something that RET has not really had before, and is typically just allocated to classes like Death Knights and Demon Hunters, where they have, I believe Demon Hunters is called tattoos, magical tattoos, or something like that, where they take reduced magic damage because they're tattoos. And then Death Knights have stuff like the passive HP increase. I guess rogues, you know, they have Feign Death with the 10 or 15% damage reduction from Feign. This is something that I think would fit really well with RET, in that it desperately needs. And now that, you know, they're talking about this, I do think that Justicar's Vengeance should probably go. At this point, JV is cool in concept, but if we really think about it, this is like if Deathstrike was the primary finisher for Death Knights. It's just really weird. I'm not a fan. One thing I did suggest months and months and months ago, before the release of Dragonflight, was attaching a small heal to Final Verdict. Like, obviously it could be balanced. It's gonna have to be balanced, but it could be like healing for 5% of the damage, healing for 7% of the damage of Final Verdict. Something that we can take into casters that lets us actually have something to choose outside of Eye for an Eye, because Eye for an Eye is not that great into, I mean, it doesn't work into magic damage. And there's very few pure physical damage dealers left in the game, so Eye for an Eye is also not that great of a talent. Like, all of our defensives could use a giant upgrade, and if I had to pick any of them to keep, it'd probably be a buffed version of Divine Protection, because back in the day, this was my personal favorite. But maybe lower the cooldown to a minute, and, you know, we'll work from there to see how it goes. What else do we have here? Maneuverability. We recognize that there's an issue here, and we hope to make some improvements. However, we want to set a clear expectations. RET Paladins should not expect to gain the mobility of rogues. Wow. So Steed of Glory. Steed could be gone, guys. Steed could finally be gone. That's crazy. So going back into the history of RET Paladin, up until Warlords of Draenor, RET was one of the most mobile specs in the game, and a lot of it came from being unslowable, or near unslowable and unrootable. We had 2 charges of Hand of Freedom. We had an ability called Emancipate, and prior to that, it was just attached to our Cleanse ability, which would remove 1 slow or 1 root every press with no cooldown. Now, that sounds kind of insane, but at the same time, back in the day, we didn't have that ridiculous burst that we have now. So we had good uptime, and we had our wings burst. But outside of our wings burst, we didn't have any, like, 1-minute goes or anything like that. It was just big wings and fairly good uptime. And that's what let us, you know, maintain pressure on targets, was giving us uptime and giving our partners uptime. Now, if I had to pick my favorite iteration of RET mobility, it would be the Emancipate era, which was between Mop and Wad, where we could just spam our Cleanse or spam our Emancipate and get out of roots while having freedom. Now, there was no unbound freedom, so freedom was able to be dispelled, but we had Pursuit of Justice or Long Arm of the Law. Now, Pursuit of Justice was depending on how much Holy Power we currently had. Each Holy Power increased our movement speed by, I believe, 5%, with a base 15% increase when we had no Holy Power. So I think we're moving like up to 30% or 35% faster with a fully stacked Holy Power bar, which is really cool, which means, you know, we use our generators, and if we can't hit the target, then we're running faster towards the target. That was really good game design. That was good game design, in my opinion. Now, we also had something called Empowered Seals back in the day, which we had seals. So like we have ores right now, we could switch between different seals. And for example, I believe it was Seal of Justice. When we used a Judgment or any attack ability, we would apply 50% slow. So we had guaranteed slows, and it would increase our move speed even further with Empowered Seals. So we had really good mobility back in the day, and really good slows. Which is another thing that I'm going to talk about, is Retribution slowing movement speed. Now, I would prefer a world where we got really high uptime, really good movement speed, really good kiting skills and abilities, but we don't have to have a slow. I'm okay with not having a slow. For example, we could have our movement speed cap judgment come back, where whenever we judgment, the enemy's movement speed cannot go above 100%. This was a thing that Retribution had for a long time, and it's currently in Wrath of the Lich King right now. It's a red judgment, but if we got our our emancipates, our unslowability, and our passive increased movement speed back, maybe we just get rid of slow. I don't even play with Hand of Hindrance, guys, right now. Like, Hand of Hindrance is so bad. Like, what? We have to talent into our slow. It's a 30-second cooldown, and it's dispellable. That is, like, Hand of Hindrance is straight up the worst slow in the game. Name me, guys, I challenge you, name me a worse slow than Hand of Hindrance in the game. You won't. It doesn't exist. Obviously, we also have Consecrated Ground for an AoE slow, which I actually do like more than I thought I would. It is cool, especially with the Consecrated Blade proc, but just like completely get away from Consecration. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It was cool back in the day, back in Wrath of the Lich King, to have Consecration do some AoE damage, but the game has evolved past the point where stationary AoE is kind of a thing at all. It's just not. So if we reworked all these Consecration talents, including the modifier talents in the Paladin tree, I would be very grateful to have that. And by the way, reported this bug back in beta after they got rid of Long Arm of the Law in beta and moved it to Sanctified Ground. This is permanent. It's straight up permanent. You take this talent, Sanctified Ground, you drop it in the beginning of an arena, and the effect never goes away. It doesn't have to be an arena. It can be open world, BG, wherever, a dungeon. And you know what? It's not noticeable. It's just straight up not noticeable. Our mobility is so poor that even with not being able to be slowed below 80% movement speed, it just doesn't matter. Even with this permanent. So keep that in mind, guys. Going forward, we are very immobile. Now, I do want to talk about Steed one more time. I am a Steed hater. It is well aware that a lot of Reds are Steed haters, and I think I want it to go. I straight up want it to go. But at the bare minimum, if they decide to make Steed stay in the game, please put it on a choice node between Steed and something else, some other movement speed increase, because I don't like it, especially it being on the global and not removing or suppressing slows or roots. It is so clunky. In Legion, when it came out, it was cool. I thought it was interesting, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work anymore. I don't know if it ever worked, to be honest, but not a fan of Steed of Glory. Sorry, Pony. Sorry. So yeah, that's about it for mobility for the moment. I want mobility back. I want uptime back. Our slows are bad. Screw it. We don't need a slow. That's fine. Give us a movement speed cap. Give us Emancipate. That would be cool. Our slows are already terrible as is. Now, let's talk about utility. Now, this probably... I don't know how I would go about fixing RET utility. This is another difficult one. Things that I would like to see baseline in the tree are Blessing of Sanctuary, maybe a Magic Dispel, maybe a talent to take Bubble or Bop off global cooldown or something. RET utility is very interesting. Turns out Lay on Hands in PvP, it sucks. You put a 30-second forbearance on someone, and they think, like, after they instantly die, after you just Lay on Hands them, why didn't you bot me? Or why didn't you bubble yourself? Because Lay on Hands is off global. So sometimes you have to use it. And it does no healing in PvP. It's capped to 75% of your max health, but it's also affected by Mortal Strikes and by dampening. So sometimes in a solo shuffle or in a threes arena, you press this button and your HP doesn't go anywhere, or your teammate's HP doesn't go anywhere. And they're like, oh, why didn't you press XYZ, whatever? It's like, oh, I had forbearance. Or worse, you're playing with a Holy Paladin in a solo shuffle, and all of a sudden, you can't bubble because they Lay on Hands you, but your HP didn't go anywhere because they Lay on Hands you, and this spell sucks. So, like, honestly, like, scrap this spell. And a lot of people are asking for Spellbot back, but I think there are other ways to give RET defensive cooldowns that have lower cooldowns, but also have a way to make it like not have us be super toxic into casters. So obviously, you know how we feel against casters. Ret feels awful playing into caster metas. But if all of a sudden we have spell bop and we now dominate casters, then from their point of view, Ret's insane. So that's just something to keep in mind, to be aware about, is that happy middle ground that provides us with accurate, potent defensives that aren't as oppressive. Because a lot of people think bubble is oppressive, but I would be happy getting rid of Divine Shield in place of other more reliable cooldowns. Just because MD and like Mass Dispel and Shattering Throw just completely invalidate Ret defensives or Divine Shield. It is what it is. Let's go back into the blue post here. So going forward, I'm going to be covering this update as much as I can. I'm also going to be updating my Ret PvP guide for the 10.0.5 patch, since we'll probably have about a month and a half, is my guess, till this rework comes out. Maybe 2 months. We shall see. But guys, I'm super excited. I'm super happy for the Ret Paladin update. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you want to see. I know we're going to see the comments. Avenging Leap, Tyrael's Charge, or whatever. For those of you that don't know, there was something similar to Avenging Leap that was in the game but non-functional in the Legion beta. And I'm not going to get my hopes up because that was really, really cool sounding. But if all of a sudden we have a Charge or Heroic Leap, you know, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take whatever we can get. Hell, I'll take 2 Charges of Freedom. But going forward, yeah. I'm so happy, guys. I'm so happy. Just a little character update. I do have my 4-set bonus. These are my stats, but it's not my PvP stats. I'm slowly climbing in 3s with Ret Warrior. It does feel interesting to play into the Asteroid S-Priest meta. But yeah, it is what it is. And then Solo Shuffle, played 1 game of Solo Shuffle, went 5-1, which is cool. I'm sorry, the file literally corrupted. I ran out of storage on my computer as I was recording it in round 6, and of course it crashed my game. So I couldn't even win the 6th round, but yeah. I'll try and get some more Solo Shuffle footage in the near future. And guys, it's looking up for Ret right now. I'm very happy. All right. If you enjoyed, feel free to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitch, Twitter, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.